Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, your host, and today I'm here with Juanita Wheeler, and she is a podcast host. Well, I'm going to let her introduce herself, but if you are looking for how to get into TED Talks or how to be a public speaker, this is the episode for you. So Juanita, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Thank you so much, Charisse. I'm Juanita Wheeler. I am a public speaking strategist, a speechwriter, and a speaker coach. I'm the CEO and founder of my own company called Full and Frank. And in addition, I'm the CEO and head of speaker coaching for TEDx Brisbane, our local TEDx event here in Brisbane, Australia.
Great. And I want to ask real quick, Full and Frank, how did you come up with that title? Because I love it.
Oh, I'm glad you love it. I love it too. I left corporate about 11 years ago this year. And when I did, I thought I wanted to go out and I didn't want a name that would be like Juanita Wheeler and Associates. That's fine for some people, but it just didn't feel right for me. And so with a dear friend of mine, we sat down and we listed out all of the things that would be identifying and descriptive about my style and the way I do my coaching and my consulting. And we came down with a big list. And at the bottom of it, we got to two, and one was comprehensive but blunt, and the other was Full and Frank. And we went, well, that's catchier. And then was surprised to learn it wasn't trademarked. So Full and Frank it is. And it very much now is both a brand and a product disclosure statement. So if you're going to spend time working with me, I will be full and frank. I will tell you everything you need to know and nothing that you don't.
I love that. And I think that it's so important to be full and frank, especially as a coach. You know, I'm a realtor and they'll ask when they want to sell their house, okay, what do you think? And I said, well, permission to be frank. And they're like,
I love it.
I'm like, okay, here we go. Because that's what they're hiring me for. If I'm not going to be honest with them and up forward or up front, then why are you hiring me? Why are you paying me? So I love that you do that with your clients.
I love that you do it as well. It's a very lost art, I think, in some ways. I had experience, particularly when I was in corporate, where you were engaging with consultants or coaches who would fall over themselves to be kind. In the best way you'd say, they were just trying so hard to be nice that it might take 3 sessions before they got to telling you what you needed to know. And, you know, if you take the best case scenario, they were doing it to be polite and exceedingly nice and gentle. And in the worst case scenario, they were doing it to charge you 3 times for 3 hours, what you could have told them in 5 minutes. And that never sat well with me. So I'm like, you could have told me this. So my goal was always to be absolutely full and frank.
That's good. That's fantastic. Okay, now let's get into TED Talks. What is it and how can you get started?
Well, TEDx Talks are run by independent events that are run by the community under a license from the Global TED Corporation based out of New York, which is fantastic. I'm biased, but they're fabulous in that they allow for TED-style talks to happen in local communities, reflecting what is important to that community as well as to the world. So I have the license to run TEDx Brisbane, and so we seek out speakers that fit with themes and fit with things that are priorities to us. So for people who are interested in getting involved in TEDx and perhaps applying to give a TEDx talk, one of the best things you can do is find out about your local TEDx event. And you can do that by just going to the TED website. If you Google TEDx event listing, TED has provided you one for free. Please don't pay anyone for this list, which some people, are seeking for you to do. You can get it for free. TED has done it for you. And you can search by a geographical area or a particular event name if you know it.
See, I'm so naive about this because I didn't know that. I thought that you had to go fly somewhere and it's only one location. And so I think that it's great that you're sharing this information for people like me that were unaware of it.
Yes, I think there are usually over 3,000 TEDx events around the world every year. There are TEDx happening virtually every day in some place in the world. On the day when we run our events, we always throw up a map at the beginning of the day and show all of the cities and countries where a TEDx event is happening at the same 24-hour window as ours. And usually there's anywhere between 12 and 24 events happening at the same time. So it's a wonderful global community. But it is really important that people know there will likely be a TEDx event wherever you are in the world, quite close to you. And so a really great thing I say to all my aspiring speakers that I coach is go to some TEDx events first, sit there, understand what they feel like, find different events. They're all magnificent, but they have their own special flavor and something that makes each event slightly distinct. Find one that's right for you and then find out how you can get involved as a volunteer and potentially as a speaker. The other really important thing to know about TEDx events is it's sort of about 50-50 between those events that allow you to apply. They'll run open applications. So, for example, I on my website have, for my subscribers, I have a list of all events that are currently have open call for speakers that I know about. So at any given time, there'll be some TEDx events on there because they have open calls for speakers. But about 50% of TEDx, including TEDx Brisbane, we don't have open applications. We are watching and monitoring people and ideas for 2 to 3 years before the event. And then they'll get a tap hold on the shoulder from us and an invitation to speak. But there are exceptions to that and variations. So while you can't apply to speak at our event, we do this, which I think is a very cool thing. We do a 1-minute pitch competition every year. So we recognize that people who are in our audience also may have truly magnificent ideas. And so we invite them to pitch them in a video for 1 minute. Once you've bought your ticket, anyone who comes to our event can pitch their idea. And then our team look at them and we pick the best 6 to 8 and they become finalists and they get to stand on the red circle on event day in front of the entire audience and deliver their 1-minute pitch. And there's a winner. But the really, really cool thing, I think, is it gives them that moment to realize and that feedback from people in the audience to come up to them after and say, oh my gosh, I love your idea. Tell me more. But the other cool thing is in any given year, I think our last event, we had 2 of our 16 to 20 speakers were formal 1-minute pitch finalists. Wow. So it's also another great way to get on our radar.
That's great. That's great. So how do you structure a speech, like a compelling speech, so that they could be on a TED Talk or to even start public speaking?
That's a really big question. The answer is there is no one right way. There are lots of different ways. And it really depends on what you're trying to achieve and your audience. But as a general rule, if you're pitching an idea, then there are 3 really important components to it. They don't have to be in chronological order, and the amount of time that you spend on each one will vary greatly. But as a whole, if you really wanted a starting point, it's 3-act structure. There's a reason people have been talking about a 3-act structure since Plato. It works. The human brain likes to receive information in that way. And so your 3-act structure would be what your life or the life of people you work with was like before your great idea happened or your big moment happened that is a catalyst for change. If you think of it in terms of a movie or a natural disaster film, it's the ordinary life, what life is like before the big event happens. And you need to explain that. And in that, you need to explain what the problem is. Because if your idea is going to solve a problem, well, I need to know what the problem was so I can be impressed by the fact you have a solution. So you need to detail the problem. And then the second act is you explaining your solution, your idea, why it's great, why it's going to make a difference. And then the third act is the happily ever after. So if you believe me, if you embrace this, here's the happily ever after. You might have examples from people that you've worked with. You might have examples from your own life. But this is the happily ever after you can get to. If you listen to me, believe me, embrace my idea, put it into action, this is where we can go. And that's the third act. So it's a very basic structure that will serve you every time. People overcomplicate it. And don't get me wrong, I am a mad fan of the hero's journey and its 15, 16 parts. But if you are being asked to speak and you're just starting out with speechwriting, go with the 3-act structure. It will get it done.
I love that. And I have to say, and I don't mean this rudely, but I've been to several funerals in the last couple of weeks, right? And unfortunately, it's been a rough year already. And some of these speakers, they'll get up, even at a funeral, and you're talking about the life of somebody and to cheer them. But when you put the audience to sleep at a funeral, I mean, that's just horrible. And I think that people, no matter the situation, like this one guy got up and literally read like pages and pages, and he just read, and it was 35 minutes later. No, I looked around because I've obviously taken a lot of speaking classes and coaching, and nobody's paying attention. Like, they're all like, why are we here? Like, we're here to celebrate this guy, and he's talking about something that has nothing to do with this guy's life. And so I think that, again, no matter where we are, taking your structure and using that anytime you give any type of a talk, I think is important.
Absolutely. And boy, do I have a funeral story for you. So very sadly, my father-in-law passed away a few years ago. And thank you. And my husband was obviously very sad. They were, close, lived in the same town, probably hadn't gone more than a week without seeing each other, except for, overseas holidays in their entire lives. He wanted to get up. He was one of three brothers, but he was one of them speech, a dedication. And he wanted to really celebrate. It's that NAF expression. I want to celebrate their life. But he really did. But he wanted the people there to truly see him through his eyes and understand who he was, and to walk away knowing him a little bit better, or having those moments, if they were involved with those particular stories or events, that it would rekindle their understanding and their love. And so it's lucky when you have a speechwriter in the house, because he was struggling a bit, and I'm like, just tell me what you want to say. And I helped him with the writing based on the things that he wanted to do. I'm like, cool, because that's what I do for a living. I take people's great ideas, and I'm like, cool, now here's a kick-ass speech to actually champion that the best way possible. And so I gave it to him, and he loved it. He made some tweaks. I'm like, absolutely, it's yours, tweak away. Then I said, okay, well, now we're rehearsing it. He's like, oh no, like, he's grieving, and I'm like, look, I'm so sorry to be that, but trust me, it'll be worth it. You'll feel better. You'll do a great job. Everyone will love it. It will elevate. It'll achieve all the things that you want to happen, but you got to practice. And so I think I made him, like, the first thing, I think he got through one paragraph, and the second time, I think by the third or fourth, he was like halfway through and had to stop. And then on the seventh time, and this is over several days. It's not all on one day. I'm not that much of an evil taskmaster. But I think we did 7 run-throughs, and by the end, it was really good. And he still had his papers, but he only glanced at them from time to time. And it was fantastic. And he is not a public speaker, but he had that entire room of people laughing, then crying, then smiling, and they were just riveted on him the whole time. And he had all of these people coming up and talking to him afterwards about how he had really captured what David was like, and how they learned a little bit more about him and loved him a little bit more. And it was just magnificent. But those days, it's a terrible thing I'm like, I'm going to be that person who says, like, I'm like, you will feel so much better about yourself and that you did this afterwards than if, as you say, you get up and you just flap your gums. Because speaking at a funeral is one of the most important bits of public speaking you would ever do. It's an honor. It's a privilege. You're encapsulating somebody's life. So yes, it's worth doing. But yes, I was the evil taskmaster, but it absolutely paid off.
Well, and I think also, because I remember when I was starting to write a speech for what I talk about, I couldn't get through without crying, right? And so my coach, he's like, you have got to get a point where that no longer affects you like it is. And with your husband, the same thing. He was able to rehearse it. He knew all that stuff. He went through it so that he probably wasn't as emotional being able to give the speak as he would have been, right?
Absolutely. I think it's really important. Sometimes I will get people come to me who have really emotional stories often. And they will say, can you please help me to not cry or not get a vocal crack?
Right.
And I'm like, first of all, don't ever get rid of the vocal crack. If it's authentic and you're getting choked up, that is a wonderful human empathetic trigger to everybody in the audience to feel the same thing. So stop, don't ever get rid of that. And in terms of the crying, we need to get you from the point of crying so much that you can't go on.
Right. And see the words.
And that's a no.
Right.
Crying so people you're in the moment and you're feeling it, and people can see that it's authentic and it's sincere and it's not showmanship. It's not a trick or a hustle. It's just real human emotion, but you can keep reading and speaking. That's where we want to get.
Right. Absolutely. I think the inauguration address for the United States, President of the United States, was recent. And okay, I'm sorry, but I am going to critique because looking at the teleprompter the whole time, like, can you imagine me having a podcast and talking like this the whole time? Like, your audience is right here, not right here, not over here. And your inauguration address, you should be as familiar enough with it so that you can actually be a little more not so reading every single word. So then they had 3 benedictory prayers, if that's a word. The first one read. I'm like, is this a prayer? Because you're reading it. And so then it became a speech. The second one, he did not have a single note in front of him. He just spoke. And it was beautiful that he just he's using his hands. He's doing, I think it was a Baptist. So it was fun to watch anyway. But just, he knew what he was going to say. He said it from the heart. He just blah. And it was beautiful. And then the third one, again, it was another speech / prayer where he's reading it and he doesn't move, and it's and so you don't know, do you open your eyes? Do you not? Do you keep them closed? Whatever. But it was just interesting to see those 4 people get up and speak. It's such an important event, and see who is prepared, who is not, and what type of emotions did they create versus not create.
100%. So a large number of my clients, aside from TEDx speakers I work with, are entrepreneurs. These are people who aren't necessarily, hey, I want to go out and public speak, but they're people who understand, I want to grow my business and I want to position myself as an expert. And I understand, whether I like it or not, which is basically where I came from, because I'm an introvert and public speaking was not my jam. I had to learn how to do it. Is that public speaking is a great way to grow your business. It is a great way to position yourself as an expert in a field, which means learn it. And so we'll often have those discussions. I have the same discussion with my TEDx speakers when I say, you cannot have a teleprompter and there are no notes. And they're like, what? And I'm like, and it has to be memorized. And 6 weeks out from our event day, you have to come to a green light meeting where you will get the final green light to be able to walk onto our stage. And it has to be memorized. We'll give you 5% leeway if you skip a couple of words or just things we know you can fix in the next 6 weeks. But it's part of understanding there are 3 things I always say to them. This is what, when you memorize and can get up and deliver a speech without notes, it says 3 things to your audience. It says, I am so passionate about this topic that I do not need notes. And I am such an expert on this topic that I do not need notes. And thirdly, it says, you are so important as individuals in this audience, and I have such respect for you that I took the time to make sure I learned this because your time is worth me putting in that preparation. And when you don't memorize it, it says exactly the opposite of those things, which are not good. So people always say, often I get people who'll come to me and they're like, I want to do it, but I can't memorize. And with the small exception of, there are some people who legitimately, they're not going to be able to memorize it. I work with some people who have acquired brain injuries. And so there are very legitimate reasons they're not going to be able to memorize. But with everybody else, it's not that you can't memorize it. You just haven't found the right technique for you yet. Because everyone I've worked with, you can get to the point where you can. You just got to keep working till you find one. And the other important part about preparation is that memorization and rehearsing are 2 entirely different things. People think they're the same. Like, as I'm rehearsing, I'm memorizing and they're the same. I'm like, no. Memorizing is till you know the words and you can recite them like a robot, like an actor knows the words in a script. Rehearsing is where you go, okay, I no longer have to stand here and look weird or be focused so much on what is my next line, because you know it, that you can then focus on being an authentic human and having a conversation with the audience, because you are not sitting there while delivering one line thinking, what's the next line, what's the next line, what's the next line. It is, you've got that now. That's done. Now you're just focused on being an authentic human, having a conversation. So memorizing, rehearsing, 2 entirely different things. You memorize till you sound like a robot, and then you rehearse till you are having an engaging, authentic conversation with the audience.
I think that is a great distinction. And I think that plays, because a movie, they only have to memorize that line till they hit cut, and then they can take the next line. But a play, you have to memorize that whole thing. And I think the plays that I really enjoy are the ones where they have that emotion and they become that character. They become who they are because they know that the lines so well that it's not memorizing. You're right. The emotion really does come through and it's authentic. So that's good to know. I didn't know that you couldn't have a teleprompter. So that's good information.
Look, I think there are one or two TEDx's that maybe let it happen. But yes, no, it's an absolute no. We only once ever let somebody have notes. And it was because she was a 96-year-old nun and she was frail and she was worried. And I really wish she hadn't had them, because when you have notes, you're going to use them far more than you need to just because you have them. And she really didn't need them. She was amazing. But it's very, very hard to tell a 96-year-old nun who is just a formidable, amazing woman, I'm sorry, you can't have these. So, it was, will she go on stage? Will she not? She will if she has notes. But no, unless we tell our speakers, unless you're a 96-year-old nun, no.
So. That's beautiful. So how do you make a memorable speech? What are some techniques you can do?
That's a great question. I think the important thing, and this is my 2 cents on this, because every speaker coach you speak to will have a different view on this, and everyone will think that theirs is right. I think there's no one thing that's right, but here's my best advice I give to people who have gone on to give very compelling talks, either keynotes or TEDx talks that have been picked up by TED.com or that have been editors' picks with TED on the website, is that stop thinking about, and hopefully you're not, but stop thinking about your performance on a stage when you give a presentation. By the way, it is a performance. If it wasn't a performance, you'd send it by email. But stop thinking of engagement and getting the engagement of the audience as something that you can trick them into, or some type of hustle. Sometimes I'll get people to say, oh, what can I do with my hands? Or what can I do with my vocal modulation that will trick the audience to be more engaged with me? And I'm like, okay, those things, the things you're talking about, let's stop thinking about ways we can falsely coerce the audience into engagement with it. The true way to get and give a truly memorable speech is to have an audience member listen to you and think, oh my gosh, this speech was written just for me. Yeah. And the way to do that is actually quite simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, in that what you need to do is know before you go, who is your audience? And then what do you want them to do? So my type of public speaking that I coach in specifically is strategic public speaking, which is why entrepreneurs and people who are thought leaders come to me, because I'm about getting to yes. So I don't do the flapping the gum public speaking. There's some great people who can do that, wedding toasts and alike. I'm all about getting your audience, the people who are your target audience, to say yes, whether that's to buying a product or a service or a merger or changing legislation. Doesn't matter. We're trying to get them to yes. So to do that, you need that audience to be persuaded by what you say. It's all about persuasive speaking. You want them to say yes. So know who your audience is. Know what their pain point is, and if that's the same thing that you can solve. And then make sure in that first act, when you're outlaying the problem, it resonates with them. So if you're speaking to a room full of accountants, make sure that what you're articulating as the problem in the first act, something that they know, that resonates, that experiences with them. And you'll know you've landed it because you'll see people put down their phones. They'll hear in your opening couple of minutes, if you see people stopping double screening, or they're putting down their phones and they sit a little higher and they look at you because you've just said, oh, this is particularly true for accountants because XYZ, my knowledge of accountants that I've researched before, I have come and delivered this keynote, and they're all looking up. So authentic engagement involves understanding your audience, understanding their pain points, telling them quite clearly how you're going to make it better, and then in your act 3, telling them the happily ever after if they believe you and take action.
That is so good. And that really is. You have to know your audience. And I think it's the same thing with anything. If you're talking to entrepreneurs and you're trying to get other people to buy your service, what do they need? And do you match it? Because you're not going to be able to meet everybody. You need to be able to do a niche and speak to those people like you talked about the accountants. So I love that.
Absolutely. The other really important thing about niches that makes public speaking just a great way to fast track your business growth. And it's one of the most underappreciated types of public speaking in the realm is industry-specific conferences. So I had somebody the other day actually, and they were talking about they were involved in real estate, and they were saying they were going and speaking at these real estate conferences. And I said, that's great. Why? And if it's to boost your profile in the industry, absolutely. And I'm like, but that's not where she sells things. She's doing brokering. So for people who are looking to buy. And I'm like, they're not going to the real estate conferences. At the real estate conferences are all the real estate agents. So you need to be going, where are the people who are looking to buy and sell or renovate homes? Where are they? And then we list, she went and did the research and listed out, going, well, actually, they're going to these events and these conferences, homeowners things about renovation and beautiful home expos, all of those kind of things. I'm like, great, that's where your people are. They're the people who can say yes to your services. So what can you go and speak about that relates to, that helps them, that isn't a hard push sell, that you're actually giving value to them, but will make them go, great, what else have you got? I'm going to go to her when I need a broker.
Yeah, it's true. Create value, serve, not sell. That's what I'm always told first. Okay, so we're going to switch gears for a minute, and we're going to talk about being a mom. So you are the mom of 3. And
I am.
How long have you been doing the TED Talk business or public speaking coaching?
Well, I've been doing informally. I've been doing public speaking coaching for over 20 years now. I started by sorting it out myself. I mentioned before, I'm a screaming introvert. And so I was finding in the corporate world that I would put forward ideas in paper, in writing, in emails and proposals, because writing is my, go-to preferred formula. And then I would find myself in meetings and somebody else, let's call him Chad, would get up and his idea would not be as good, but he would be prepared to stand up and articulate it with passion, with frankly no better oratory skills than grade 12 speech and drama, but it was enough to be compelling. And so I repeatedly saw this happening and I went, okay, cool. So I need to learn how to do this. I don't like it. I'm going to have to learn how to do this. So that's how I learned. And then I was doing it well, so other people started to gravitate towards me and say, hey, can you teach me how to do that? And then 11 years ago when I started my own company, Full and Frank, predominantly I was doing strategic consulting, so strategic planning, mergers and acquisitions, business negotiations, business development. But a key part of that became public speaking coaching, because I realized it didn't matter how good a strategic plan was or a business proposal or a merger and acquisition plan if somebody couldn't get up and sell it. So public speaking became a sort of part of that bundled work. And then in 2015, I took over the TEDx Brisbane license. Originally, I had just been an audience member. I was participating in the audience of an event. And then the year after, they asked me to volunteer, which I did. And the year after, they asked me to speak about what I was working on at the time, which was the way charities are funded. And then in 2015, they asked me to take over the license because the original person who had founded that event, she got a job offer to go work a maternity leave contract for work in London, working for Richard Branson. So you say yes. And so she asked me. So from 2015, then I was also doing the TEDx curation and the speech, helping with the speech writing and the speaker coaching. So, and I realized that's where I feel I can have the most impact. I bring all of my strategy work, all of my business development. I got 3 master's degrees, 2 in business, 1 in social change leadership, and they all funnel into the ability to help entrepreneurs and change makers and thought leaders to champion their ideas so they don't just stay in their minds or in their showers or in their cubicles or in their PhD, but they're actually out in the world making a difference and having impact. So like so many people during COVID, I had a bit of a moment of reflection and went, which is the part of my work? I had this suite of things, which is the part of my work that I love the most? And it was helping people articulate and champion their ideas. So I said, I'm just going to focus on this and see where that takes us. And it's been a joy and a privilege. And, now I realize, this is what I'm on the planet to do, to help people who have their own great ideas, products, services, businesses, to champion them in a way that gets traction and impact.
That is amazing. And I love to hear those stories because it wasn't an overnight success. I mean, you were willing to put in the work where you became that audience member, then you volunteered, and then you were approached and given the opportunity, which of course you jumped at. And so as a mom trying to raise children during this time, how were you able to involve both?
First of all, that's really challenging. I was, and there's been different challenges at different stages. So I was 17 and pregnant. And then my husband and I, we had 3 kids by the time I was 23, we had the 3 kids. And I was trying to finish my first degree. So first of all, my husband is amazing. And I couldn't do all the things that I do without his support. He is my biggest champion. The second thing is my mother-in-law was fabulous. I mean, our kids were in childcare, but you're trying to get to lectures to finish that first degree, and childcare doesn't open until 7:30, and you've got to be at a lecture on the other side of town at 8 a.m. And you've got a 1-hour bus ride. So she helped pick them up when I had to go in early, and on the days when they weren't well, and they weren't really sick, they just had a sniffle, so they couldn't go to childcare. She was amazing. I wouldn't have gotten that first degree without her. So having a support system was some people who really loved you made all the difference. I can honestly say I may have gotten it done still just from pure grit and determination, but it would have been really, really a lot harder. And then when I was working for corporate, there was the challenge of I was flying, I was working internationally and then coming back. So that was really challenging. My husband would, be here home with the kids and had to be prepared to do that, which was great. But, you get those calls at different stages when they're younger. I got a call. I was, chairing a conference in Alice Springs in the centre of Australia. And, my husband's on the phone. He's like, hey, the youngest wants to talk to you. And then he's on the phone crying because he's 6. He's cut his finger with a knife. I'm like, what are you doing touching knives? He's like, you weren't here to cut my orange. And why aren't you here to cut my orange? And so you're trying to hold it together at a conference because you don't want to cry, and I've got to go back and chair the final session. And then there are teenagers, and you get that moment where I remember distinctly I was about to pitch a big proposal in an American boardroom to the head of the organization I was working for at the time. And just beforehand, I got, this text, minutes beforehand. I remember being in the toilet cubicle reading this text that says I was, all caps, worst parent ever, exclamation marks. And you're like, okay. So, there are the absolute challenges. And my eldest will tell you that I was overseas finalizing a merger and acquisition on his high school graduation. And he jokes about it now, but it's 90% joke now and 10% still you weren't at my high school graduation. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to understand that you can have there's a lot of people talk about women can have everything now. And I'm like, it's absolutely not true. But also you can't have everything all at once. So in my 20s, when I had very, very young children, I can't really remember my 20s. It was all young children in university study. And it was just, and then in your 30s, you're trying to build your career. Luckily, I had Rob, but one of us could be career building at any given time. Like you can't both do it and give all the hours because somebody has to be able to get them to the doctors, take days off work for sick kids. You just got to work out who is the best person to do that. And then, but it gets to that point now. I'm lucky my kids are in their late 20s and early 30s. They're all delights. I'm enjoying them much more as adults. But because they're wonderful humans and it's just delightful to get to know who they are as an adult to an adult. I said to my husband actually about 3 days before the TEDx offer came in, I just finished my second master's and I said, I'm not going to do anything crazy for a while. It'll just be the family and the business and I won't take on any extracurricular. I think for a while this is enough. And then I got the call. It was literally like 3 days later to take over TEDx. And so I had to, my husband back and say, do you remember, honey, when I really sincerely told you 3 days ago that we weren't going to, but I love it. Rob hadn't been to a TEDx at that point in time. I'm like, it's amazing. It's life-changing. We'll change people's lives. We have to do it. Yeah. But I won't do it unless you say okay. And he took another couple of days and then said yes. And it's been wonderful. So but I said, if we do this, let's do it together. No. And we'd worked together previously. So it was really cool. So he's our head of production. Our event would not be as amazing without knowing, he gets the stage running to down to the 30 seconds. We finish. But we also said, let's get the boys involved. So Harry, our youngest, wasn't 18 yet. So we're like, come and be in the audience, experience it. But the others, they have at different times been head of audience experience. They've hosted the event at different times. They've been in charge of running merch stalls, our commercial operations. So it truly is a family event. So TEDx takes up a lot of time to run it and you don't get paid. it's 100% voluntary. So it's like that second job you have for no money. But it's wonderful in that every year, we say it's been Christmas. It's kind of like our Christmas because you get together, you get to help these people to have a transformative moment often in their lives where they go from having self-doubt about their idea to taking the stage and really owning it and saying, here is my idea. I'm putting it out in the world and it is really good. Here's my story. So it changes their lives, but also we get messages from the audience that feedback after the event that said that was a life-changing event. And I'm not particularly focused on what they're doing, but I want to take the passion that those speakers have and the work and the diligence they've shown to their ideas, and I'm going to go and apply it to my life, which, is amazing.
It's great. I could listen to you all day just to hear. And I didn't know, again, that it was all volunteer. So the fact that you do that is even more incredible. So it's huge selfless work. So I want you to think back, if you're sitting on a park bench and this 9-month pregnant woman comes and sits next to you and she's pregnant for the first time, and you, in your position now, you reminisce you've seen the gamut with your kids at the ages that they are. So what is some advice that you would give her, and not necessarily in the baby stage, just overall as a mother, what is some advice that you would give her?
I would generally say, two things. I would say, and I have done it. So I would say, first of all, be wary of people giving you parenting advice, noting that this in itself is parenting advice.
Right.
If I had listened to all of the things people had told me, including when people told me as a teenage mum that I would be a terrible parent and I couldn't possibly have a life. I'd never get married. I'd never be able to finish degrees. I'd never own my own business. I'd never travel internationally. I'd never have a good life. I'd never own my own house. I'm like, tick, 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 tick. So there is no one right way to be a great parent. So be very wary of advice. And then the second thing I would tell them is, on days when it's really, really hard, and there will be days when it is really, really hard, think about the fabulous adult human that you are trying to raise in this world and what you hope they will be, not in terms of a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, but in terms of their values. What will they think is important in the world? How will they engage with the world? How will the world see them as a kind or a good human? And then think about what you can do today in that really, really hard moment, just to help get them move a little bit further to being that fabulous human that you aspire. And sometimes that's the only thing that's going to get you through that day, because there are going to be bad days.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Well, Juanita, if our listeners wanted to get a hold of you because they want to know more about TED Talk or writing speeches or delivering them, how would they find you?
The easiest way is to head first to my website. So you can go to fullandfrank.com/tools. And there are actually some free tools there that might also help, which include a how to grow your business using public speaking guide. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's just LinkedIn and then search for Juanita Wheeler.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
And moms, if you are thinking about, I don't need public speaking, absolutely think again, because I cannot tell you, in every single business that I've ever done, whether it be giving a presentation to new clients, and when I say presentation, I mean in conversation, to be able to get them to believe that you are the person for the job, that's what you need. You need to be able to be persuasive, you need to be able to be clear speaking, and you need to be able to get your message across and your call to action. So contact Juanita if you have any questions, but otherwise, go out and make it a great day. And if you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe. Have a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.